Welcome back to Round the Cauldron, where we talk theology, philosophy, and everyday life as a modern witch. Today we are going to be discussing the topic of practicing witchcraft and paganism with children. My daughter is going to be 8 years old soon, and I do get the occasional question of how I practice my path with her and if I incorporate her at all or if she partakes. So if you're ready to hop into the show, grab some coffee, pull up a seat, and join me around the cauldron. Today's video is in collaboration with Bex at The Witch's Cookery. We decided it would be a good idea to talk about how we work our path and practice witchcraft, and in my case also paganism, with children. I get asked sometimes if I incorporate my daughter into my practice, if she partakes at all, or if she has her own interests, so we thought it would be a good idea to talk about it. So I'll leave Bex's information in the description below. We're probably going to have a couple of different tips. My daughter is almost 8 and her son is a lot younger than my daughter is. So make sure that if you're also interested in what she has to say, that you check out her video as well. And we'll talk a bit about that too at the end. So as a parent and a pagan and a witch, I often get asked how I practice my path with my daughter. If I include her in rituals and spell work, if I don't, what I teach her, what I don't teach her. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And this still goes along the lines of my theme with February of love and love magic, because a lot of the work that I do revolves around myself and my family. And I love my family. So, the theme still stands. Anyway, I thought I would talk about it and answer a couple of questions about being a practicing witch and pagan and being a parent. First, I have a little disclaimer though, or just a note. My daughter is almost 8 at the point of filming this video, so if you have younger children, some of the things I talk about might not apply. If you have older children, they might not apply either. It just depends. So take what you will and leave what you won't. I also need to point out that these are my own tips and experiences based on being a practicing witch and pagan for more than a decade. It might not resonate with you. It might not align with the way you believe or the way you think or the way you want to raise your kids. That's okay. I'm not here to tell you that you're doing it wrong. You do you as a parent. I'm okay with that. But if you have questions or you're just curious, or if you're looking for ways that you can begin to incorporate your children into your path as a witch or pagan, then I might have some helpful tips and tricks for you and some different things that you can do. So I need to mention first that I have been a practicing pagan and witch for a long time. And it's something that I didn't really talk about when my boyfriend and I first got together. If you don't know, my boyfriend and I have been together for 12 years. 12 years? And when we first got together, religion wasn't really something that we talked about. He is not religious. He describes himself as more of an agnostic. He doesn't come right out and say gods don't exist or God doesn't exist, but he also doesn't say that they do. He's sort of on the fence. But as our relationship progressed, he found out about my beliefs and he was just like, okay, whatever. He didn't really care. When I got pregnant, this is something that we had to talk about because, how are we going to raise a child with two differing belief systems? He was very adamant that he did not want to take her to church, and he didn't want any family members to take her to church because it's not their place. And I was very adamant that I wanted her to be able to make her own decisions growing up. And that's sort of where we are. So I never indoctrinated her, I guess. That sounds like that word has a really negative connotation. But I never really taught her lore and stories and this is this and this is that about my religion, because that's what we agreed on as parents. And, you know, when I was pregnant and after I first had her, I still labeled myself as Wiccan. So if I did that and then going along now, it would be different because I'm no longer Wiccan. So long story short, her dad and I decided that she would be able to make her own decisions growing up. If she had questions, we would answer her questions to the best of our knowledge. If she wanted to try something or go to church or learn about different religious paths, then we would accommodate her to the best of our abilities. So the main thing that we really do is we follow her lead. I don't hide my practice. I don't hide any tools or candles or symbols or anything that I have on my altar space. I don't hide my energy work practices from her or my meditation. It's very much out in the open, and she is free to ask questions and we can talk about it. She is also free to ask questions about things that she hears about outside of the home. Several years ago when she was going to daycare, when I still lived in Nevada, she had come home from daycare and told me that Jesus was the reason that we celebrated Christmas. I might have talked about this before on the podcast. I don't remember. But we talked about it, and she was 4 or 5 at the time. And so I try to make sure that everything that I talk about with her is in a way that she can understand. It's very kid-friendly and age-appropriate. But we talked about how some people believe in Jesus Christ and the Christian God. Some people, like myself, do not. I believe in multiple deities and a completely different religious rule system, I guess, is the way that I want to describe it. And then some people don't believe at all. We've talked about what church is and why I don't go to church. It's very much following her lead. She has a deck of tarot cards. I had found the Crystal Vision Tarot, I think is what it was, at a thrift store several months ago. And I didn't really resonate with it. I didn't really like it too much. The cards are really pretty, but it just wasn't for me. So I gifted it to her. And if you follow me on Twitter, you will have seen that I posted that I had walked into her bedroom and there were tarot cards all over the floor, right? Like she was looking at them and everything. And it took me a minute to realize that the way they were laid out on the floor was in the Celtic crossbred, because she also has a little book that goes along with those tarot cards. And she was trying to read them. So what we're going to be doing now, since I'm homeschooling her for the rest of this year, is I'm going to incorporate learning tarot cards and learning their meanings and how to read them into our sort of school curriculum, because it's something she's interested in. She sees me do it. I do it for myself. I do it for clients. So she kind of wants to follow suit and learn how to do it and learn why I do it too. So as far as what I teach her, it's very much I follow her lead. If she's interested in something, then we can do it together. If she's not interested in it, then, I don't really force her. She is free to believe whatever she wants and make her own decisions, as long as those decisions don't actively harm someone else, right? As long as she doesn't one day come home telling us that she wants to be baptized and that we all need to be baptized too, or we're going to burn in hell. That is where I draw the line. Now, outside of religion and witchcraft, there are things that I want to instill in her that are still part of my belief system, part of the way I live my life. And these include a respect for everything around us, nature and people alike, even the things that we can't see or the things that can't directly speak to us. So the other day she was outside and she was building a blanket fort outside. For some reason, she wanted to do it outside. Oh, I know why. It's because she told me she wanted to go camping in our backyard. But she was building a blanket fort outside. She had all of her blankets. And I looked out the window and she's got blankets draped over these trees that we have in our backyard. And these are newly planted trees. I think they're magnolia trees. I don't remember what kind of trees they are. But just, thrown over the trees, and she's using the tree basically as an anchor for her blanket fort. So she comes back inside, and I'm looking at her, and I said, Emery, did you ask the tree's permission before you started throwing things all over it and messing up its branches? And she goes, yes, Mom, I did. It's okay. And so we've started learning, or she has started learning about how to read the energy of plants and to communicate with the spirit of the plants and the trees around us. Because if that tree would have said no, like, don't touch me, don't put things on me, I'm sure she would have moved to one of the other trees. I also am teaching her to never take without permission. This is something that the wider society, the general public, really has a problem with. We, as a people, we have a sense of entitlement. If it's there, I want it, it's mine, I'm gonna take it. Now, obviously, this ranges from picking wildflowers in a field to literally stealing things from other people. It's a very wide spectrum, and obviously not everyone is like this. But it's very important to me that she understand that we cohabit the earth with other people, other beings alive and not, and we should never feel like we have a right to just take something just because it's there. And along those same lines, if she does take something, if she does ask, and whatever being says yes, you can, always give something back. Don't just take and take and take and take. If you take some branches or some leaves from a tree that said yes, you can, give the tree some fresh water. Give the tree an offering. Say thank you. Reciprocity is a large part of my practice, and it's a large part of a lot of people's practices in the pagan and the witchcraft community. And it's very important, and it's something that I'm definitely trying to teach her and make her aware of. And it's not just reciprocity in taking from plants and animals. It's reciprocity with people. If you take something from someone, be sure that you give something back. Say thank you, give them money, give them your time, or when you're done with whatever you were doing, give whatever it is back to them. I also want her to learn how to breathe. Learn how to breathe. Now, obviously, we breathe all the time, but this is different. Working with your breath connects you to the energy of everything around you, and knowing when to stop and refocus and take 3 deep breaths to calm down and center yourself is a vital skill in my practice and, in my opinion, for everyone to learn, because it can keep you from reacting instead of responding, especially if you're in a situation that is volatile, or you're really emotional, or like you're really mad. You just breathe through it, breathe through the emotions and the anxieties, and think about what it is that you're doing. It's also a good way to just calm down. So we do sometimes work through this during school when she gets really frustrated and upset, and we do it sometimes just because. And I think it's one of the easiest forms of self-love that you can do, is really breathing deeply and nourishing your body and learning how to give your body that vital oxygen that it needs, that sometimes we take for granted. And we just breathe. But when you take a deep breath, as deep as you can, it's one of the most revitalizing feelings that I think anybody can feel and take advantage of. Now, as far as casting spells and actually practicing witchcraft, again, I follow her lead. If I am casting a spell or creating a charm or a spell oil, and she sees me doing it and she wants to join in, if it's safe for her to do so, then sure, she can make one. She watched me make the self-love perfume and she likes to put it on. If you don't know what that is, for those watching on YouTube, I will link it up in the corner and in the description. If you are listening to the podcast, that link will be in the show notes. We have also done protection spells and protection charms, charging some jewelry that she likes to wear for protection and calmness. I guess there's a word that I can't think of right now, but the calmness, sort of calming down anxieties and grounding and centering. We're actually going to be doing another sort of spell here on the channel, so make sure that you're subscribed and you ring the bell so you can be notified when that goes live on Thursday. We're going to be making a self-love sigil painting. Other than that, if she really has the basics, as far as I'm concerned, of energy work and focus, as much focus as a 7-year-old can have, to charge her own jewelry, to charge her own drinks, to speak her affirmations and intentions into existence. And if she wants to use those, she is free to do that. We haven't really discussed the ethics of using magic and casting spells and figuring out what it is that you want and what you don't want to happen, but that is something that will come up eventually. It's bound to happen. One question I do get asked is if she believes in the gods, or God, or no gods. And I don't really have an answer for this question. She's 7, and she's still trying to figure out if she thinks that Santa Claus is real or not. So sometimes she is gung-ho about it and she believes that the gods are real, and she asks me about Bridget, and she asks me if there are any other gods of different things, and sometimes she's just not. And that's okay, because she's still trying to figure out herself. And part of figuring out yourself is figuring out what you believe and what you know to be real and what your truth is. Now, she has said prayers with me. We have knelt in front of my altar and I walked her through what I was doing, and she knelt there with me and said her own silent prayers. And she asks questions, but that's about it. Since there's no really central authority figure in paganism, or even in specific branches of paganism, not talking about initiatory Wicca where you're in a coven and there is, there's set rules and beliefs and stuff. It's really up to her to let me know what she wants to learn and let me know what she feels and what she thinks that she believes. Again, it comes right down to it of following her lead on what she wants to know. Yeah. I do get the question of what if she wants to follow another faith? What if she wants to be Christian? What if she wants to be Jewish or Muslim? My short answer is I don't care. As long as her beliefs and actions don't actively harm anyone else, and she's not going around telling people that if they don't believe what she believes, they're going to hell, or, they're going to end up in a bad place, then I don't care. Because she is free to make that decision for herself. If what I believe and my answers to her questions don't ring true for her, who am I to deny her the right to believe in whatever deity that she wants to believe in? I'm her parent. I'm not her owner. I'm here to teach her how to be a good person and how to make good decisions and how to use her brain to come to those conclusions in the best way possible. I'm not here to tell her what to do and tell her what to believe. So if she wants to be a different faith, if she wants to believe in a different God, more power to her. I can help her find good, accurate information to lead her along that path. There is one final thing that it's not really a question that I have been asked, but it is something that I have thought about. and it is how you teach children discernment in the things that they tell other people. Because I think as pagans or as witches, or even anybody outside of what is considered the norm in your area, we have a unique challenge. I'm just going to speak from my own experience, but if it applies to you in any other way, then feel free to apply it to you. But we have a unique challenge of figuring out what is acceptable to say and do in a public space. Now, we have had the discussion of personal information and information that is okay to share. We have always taught her the difference between that. Some things are not meant to leave the house. Some things are not meant for you to tell other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not keeping secrets. It's using discernment. And one of the ways that we use this in our home is with our language. Now, if you know me personally, or you have spoken with me in a casual setting, you will know that I have a very colorful vocabulary. It's just the way that I am. I don't tend to speak that way in videos or on the podcast because I'm being more professional. I worked retail for many, many years, and I am comfortable role switching from being professional and using professional-ish language to using casual language at home. All of that to say is that I don't care about the language that my child uses at home. If she wants to cuss, she is free to do so. We talk about how language can make us feel, how sometimes saying a cuss word and just yelling fuck can make you feel better, depending on the situation. And as long as she uses them in the proper context and she's not using them to demean someone, call someone names, or just be generally hateful, then I don't care. Colorful language is not something that's new in my house. I'm not the only person in my house that has a colorful vocabulary. However, she is aware that her speaking like that would not be tolerated outside of the home. If we were to go to the grocery store or to the park and she's interacting with other children and she starts to use obscene language, I can only imagine that other parents would pull their kids away from her and not let her interact with them. Or they would come to me and tell me off and say, what the hell are you doing letting your kid talk like that? So we have spoken about things like that, where what is acceptable at home may not be acceptable in the wider population. And, as time goes on and society progresses, those types of things may change. But, she has told some friends, oh, hey, yeah, my mom is a witch and she is on YouTube. And I just kind of go, and cringe because I don't know what the reaction of other people is going to be. So teaching children discernment, if you're in an area that would look down on you for being a witch or being a pagan, or who it might be dangerous for you, is vital. Because in a perfect world, we would be okay to go out to a public space with other people and speak about our beliefs. But in the United States, at least, Christianity is the default. It is the automatic assumption. And if I go to a public space and someone's passing out flyers for a church or something, it's default that it is the default that I would either accept it and tell them thank you, or decline it and say, no thanks, I already have a church. It would not be the default for me to say, no thank you, I'm a pagan. or no thank you, I'm a witch. I don't know if I would do that. So teaching discernment to children is important. And you can start doing that with things that have nothing to do with religion or witchcraft, like we do with the language. It happened before that with a different story, but that's not my story to tell, so I'm not going to tell you. But you can start teaching your children the difference between personal information and non-personal information, and how personal information should not be shared. If you don't really have anything that that you can really talk to your kids about like that with, did that sentence make sense? Like if you don't want your kids to cuss and you don't want to talk about that, that's fine. You can use things like your address and your phone number. And we even had this discussion with my PIN number on my debit card, because we went grocery shopping and I put my PIN number in and she's trying to say the numbers out loud. And I told her, no, that's personal information. It's not something other people need to know. But you can do it with your phone number. Teach your kids your phone number and then tell them this is personal information. It's not something that you give out except for in specific situations. Teaching your children discernment about witchcraft doesn't have to focus on witchcraft the same way teaching your kids about consent doesn't have to focus on sex. It is extremely important. It can be done in a variety of creative ways. All of that to say, discernment is important in teaching your kids about witchcraft and paganism. It's also important because if you don't teach them discernment, how are they going to be able to tell a good source of information from a bad source of information? And this goes for anything, you know, especially in the age of everybody claiming that everything on the news is fake news, right? Discernment's important regardless, inside witchcraft and out. I guess that can turn into a sort of sticky situation, which I haven't had to deal with yet, where she's asked a question maybe by her friends and she feels like she has to hide part of who she is. I haven't experienced that yet, but I can assure you that if it ever happens, I will let you know how it goes, because I want her to feel free to be herself, and I don't want her to have to censor herself for her to feel like she needs to make friends. And I will not allow adults to censor her and dull the light that shines from her. Absolutely not, and that will not fly with me. Anyway, final thoughts on witchcraft with kids. I don't know if this episode went in a completely different direction than what I was originally planning, but witchcraft and paganism with kids, when you are a pagan, is just part of life. And I don't feel like it should be something that is any different than raising kids as Christian or as agnostic or not really having any sort of belief, or even raising atheist kids. It's no different. The things that we face as witches and pagans or other spiritually inclined people may be different. We might have different challenges, different circumstances, and different things that we have to worry about. But when it comes down to it, don't hide it from your kids. Don't let them see that you're hiding it from them, because one of the first things that they're going to think is, this is bad and I shouldn't do it. Why are my parents hiding it from me if it's a good thing? Why are they afraid to tell the truth? Or even think, wow, my parents are keeping secrets from me. I have always told my daughter that I will never lie to her. No matter what it is, if it's something that I can explain to her in an age-appropriate manner, she gets the truth. If it's something I can't, then I tell her, I have an answer, but I can't explain it to you in a way that's appropriate, so let's revisit this topic later. This goes for absolutely everything. She asks me a question about some sort of spell I'm doing, I'm going to tell her. She asks me a question about what I'm doing on my knees in front of my altar with my eyes closed, I'm going to tell her. When you hide things from your children about what you believe, what you're telling them is that it's not safe to tell the truth, or that you're afraid, or that you just don't think it's important enough for them to know. All things which I think are normally false in most everyone's practice. So when it comes down to it, if you're thinking about how you can involve your kids in your practice, ask them. If they're not interested, they're going to tell you they're not interested. They may look at you like you're crazy at first, or, every so often my daughter will look at me sideways and, what are you talking about, Mom? Are you sure? That's a thing. You really believe that? But I never shy away from answering her questions. And I always make it known that, yeah, that's what I believe, and that's okay if you disagree and you don't believe the same way. So I hope this episode helped you in some way, maybe gave you some insight on practicing witchcraft with kids. This episode was focused on the premise of your own children, but if you care for other people's kids, that's going to be different. You'll have to speak with their grown-ups about what it is that you're doing. But yeah, I hope it helped. Witchcraft and paganism is really part of my everyday life, and it's just part of who I am. And if that's the path that my daughter decides to take, then that's the path that she takes. So make sure that you check out Bex's video for this collab. I will leave her information in the description below. Bex is a beautiful witch with a beautiful family. She focuses heavily on kitchen witchcraft, and some of the things that she makes look absolutely delicious. Maybe one day we'll be able to meet and hang out in person, but I live in the States and she does not. So make sure you check out her video and see what she has to say about practicing witchcraft with kids, and get a glimpse of her adorable little son. And he's just so cute. And oh my goodness, him and his little hat in the snow. Oh, he's adorable. Anyway, go check out her video. Give her a follow on YouTube if you don't already subscribe to her channel. And I will see you next time. Bye for now. A big shout out to my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you enjoyed this video or podcast episode, however you partake. If you'd like to join me over on Patreon and help support the channel and the podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/roundthecauldron, where you can get exclusive content for as little as $1 a month. Don't forget, you can also join my Discord community and my Facebook group. All of those links will be in the description and in the show notes, and I will talk to you next time.